All right, so thanks for joining us. I hope you guys are having a great afternoon so far, enjoying the sessions. We're going to talk about adaptive accounts shortly. I'm Harun Rashid, Dev Manager for Platform, PayPal Platform, part of the adaptive accounts team. And we, as you can see, we have a number of presenters that are going to be co-presenting with us today. First and foremost, I guess we'll cover the agenda. We're going to talk about adaptive accounts, very high level. What is it? How is it relevant to you? And how can it help you solve some of your problems? There's a number of things that we'll get into in more depth. This is going to be more targeted to some of the developer types, and talk about some of the flows of our APIs and get down into detail on what these solutions are and how they actually operate down at the level. And then thirdly, we're going to actually talk about some of the success stories. We're going to have some of our early partners coming up on stage and talking about some of their experiences and how adaptive accounts has really come in and helped them out and streamline some of their processes. So first off, I want to start off by asking you guys a couple of questions. First off, how many guys were at the first Innovate 2009 conference last year? All right, we have a handful. And how many of you guys actually currently use the adaptive payments APIs? All right, we have a handful. And adaptive accounts. All right. So you guys come to the right place. We're going to answer all your adaptive accounts questions. So one of the things that a lot of our early adopters of adaptive payments experienced when we first launched adaptive payments back in 2009 were some growing pains. How did they get integrated? How did they get things started? But over time, they started to let things gel, and they start to see their businesses flourishing. Flourishing might be a bit of an overstatement, but they started to grow, and they started experiencing rapid growth. And their problems and challenges start to evolve, and those are good kind of problems to have. And one of the problems I think that a lot of the early adopters of adaptive payments experienced is how do they continue to expand the customer base? And one of the things that they start experiencing, a data point that's very relevant and sticks out at them, is the shopping cart abandonment. So you have a number of users and customers coming up, looking around, browsing around, but leave without actually transacting, and simply because they do not have a PayPal account. So you can imagine the experience of actually going through a website or an application and not being able to transact because you have to go to another page, another website, create a PayPal account. Well, our Adaptive Accounts Create Account API helps you streamline that experience and create the account on the fly very dynamically and very easily. So Ali, our development lead on adaptive accounts, will talk more about that in depth. The second problem that we started hearing about was from our users of adaptive payments is we want to know our users a lot better. We're starting to see increase in fraudulent activity. How do we get to know who's more trustworthy and who's more risky? So we listened and we created a new API called Get Verified Status API, which helps you determine the verification status of a user. So you can better understand how to customize an experience for your customers and present them with goods and services according to their level of verification. And thirdly, we want to be able to incur the risk, if you will, of having to deal with the customer-sensitive information. So as you have various customers adding various funding instruments to their accounts, rather than having you guys store the information and deal with the possibility of having the information leaked or stolen, that's something that we are experts in, and we can help to add the funding sources on the fly and actually store information and keep that relevant. So these are three key areas that we're going to focus on in today's presentation. There are a number of other advantages and APIs that the Adaptive Account Suites offer. For one, we have a merchant referral bonus program, which sort of incents a lot of the developers, you guys, to help create some of these accounts and create your customer base, but also allow us to expand our outreach as well. But those are things that we can talk about in the question and answer session. And also, I'd like to ask you all to please keep your question and answers to the end, because we would like to get through a number of these slides. So I'm going to turn it over to Ali Bawani. He's our development lead again for adaptive accounts. Ali?
Thank you, Harun. So I'm going to start by describing the players in this scenario and the various scenarios we're going to talk about next. So in most cases, what you're going to be dealing with is basically 4 primary players. There's you, the API caller. You're running a shopping cart or a site, or you're doing business with customers, albeit PayPal or otherwise. And you're interacting with the PayPal API endpoint and the website. So these are the players listed here. The API caller, listed as a C. The end user, a current or future PayPal customer. And as I mentioned, the endpoint, this is the endpoint that you use to make the API calls. And finally, the PayPal website. This is primarily used to get the end user confirmation for operations that you're doing on their behalf, as I will describe next. So we'll start with the Create Account API. As you see in the diagram there, we have the API caller on the leftmost side, the end user, and then the API endpoint, and then the website. And so what will happen? The first step that will happen is you have a customer on your site. You're about to lose them because they don't have a PayPal account, and rather than lose them, you'd like to close the deal, and so you have the option. You already have collected their information, most likely, so you're going to create a PayPal account on their behalf. So you make a call to the endpoint, contains the request. The request contains the API credentials, the account type, personal, premier, or business, their email address, their name, and their physical address, and 1 phone number, mobile or home or other. And primarily, that's it. Now, you see this blob there called optional details. So depending on the account type you're creating, you may need to provide more information. For example, in Canada, regulatory requirements require us to collect the date of birth, so you'll need to pass that in for Canada, for example. If you're creating a business account, you'll most likely need to pass in the tax ID of the business for whom you're creating the account. So, and then as Harun mentioned earlier, within the same API call, you can pass in your merchant referral bonus ID, and that way you get incentives when you create accounts on other people's behalf. So as they do business, you make money. Kind of a good deal. So anyways, you send us the request. We send you back a response, and it primarily comprises of 2 things: a status of whether the call worked or not. If the call is successful, you will get a redirect URL back. If the call failed, you'll get an error message indicating why the call failed. And so the redirect URL you basically pass to your end user, as they do here. The end user goes to it. In this scenario, the expected use case, you notice I'm mentioning pop-up or lightbox. So the expected use case is the end user is still on your site. You got a redirect URL back from the API call. And now you just use, use some JavaScript to either pop up a window or use a lightbox, and you pop up this little mini browser window. The end user enters their password in twice, clicks OK, or agree and continue rather, and at that point they have a working PayPal account. And then the window goes away, and they're back on your site. Pretty seamless experience. We do actually have some customizations possible on that. So instead of a pop-up window, you can use a full browser experience and then redirect them explicitly back to your site. We support that mode as well. But that's all there is to create an account. Fairly simple experience to create a PayPal account. Next, I'm going to talk about the Get Verified Status API. This is a scenario that enables you to determine whether a given customer that you're dealing with is PayPal verified or not. The importance of the PayPal verified label for a given end user is that by dealing with verified customers, you get better protections from chargebacks and protects you from fraudulent cases. So in most cases, it's always a good idea to verify whether a given customer you're dealing with is PayPal verified or not. In this case, you see that there are only 3 players. You have you, the API caller, you have the end user, and then you have the API endpoint. It's a pretty simple use case. First, the expectation is that you're dealing with some end user who's doing business with you. They will need to provide you some information in order to be able, for you to be able to make the call. Why? So the information we ask for, first of all, is first name, last name, and email address. Why do we ask for 3 bits of information instead of just email address? The answer here is because we didn't want to make this into a Fisher's dream come true. We didn't want them to target phishing emails to people who have a verified PayPal account. So therefore, we want you to know a little bit more about the customer that you're dealing with before you can make this call to determine their verified status. So at some point, you collect their first name, last name, and email address. You pass that on to us via an API call, which is pretty simple. You pass in your API credentials, their first name, their last name, and their email address. If these match a unique PayPal account, we give you a response which will either say verified or unverified. Or if you didn't get one of those 3 bits of information correct, then we'll basically, say we don't really know what the status of this account is. And that's all there is to the Get Verified Status API. Talking about the Add Bank Account API, this is the API that we offer to those of you who are interested in using us as your payment processor, to either make your site less vulnerable to attacks and fraudulent cases, or if you're just looking for a better payment processor. And we'll describe some key use cases where PayPal offers value in payment processing compared to some other processors that you might be using, or if you're doing the ACH transactions yourself. So in any case, again, the 4 players are back on the screen. You have the API caller, the end user, the API endpoint, and the website. So first step is that you must obtain the end user's consent to give us their bank account details. You obtain that consent, and then you make the request to us. It comprises of the API credentials, their PayPal email address, and this blob called bank details. I want to take a moment to elaborate on the bank details. We tried to make this API easy for you to use. And so if you look at the WSDL at some point, you will see that the API parameters are targeted towards the language that you are used to. So if you're dealing with primarily US accounts, what the API requires in that case is the routing number and the account number. If you're dealing with UK, you might have the sort code and account number. If you're dealing with European countries, we just ask for an IBAN number. So basically, you don't have to learn new terminology to make this, to use this API. We try to customize to your use case and make it easy for you to call the API. So anyways, you call the API. You get a response back. Again, it's either basically a status, whether it worked or didn't work. If it didn't work, we'll tell you what's missing or what's wrong, etc. And a redirect URL. While you obtain the end user's consent, we must ensure that the end user for whom you're adding the bank account is the one who he has a valid PayPal account and he actually agrees to this operation. So as a result, we pass your redirect URL, you redirect them to it, and we ask them to log in. We want to make sure they actually own the PayPal account to which the bank account is being added. So they log in. They're presented the bank details. In this case, it's the US bank details. It's a US bank account, so we are showing the routing number and the last 4 digits of the account number here. In most cases, we are also able to look up the bank name, so we populated there as well. They click Continue. And at this point, they get the random deposit screen that they get if they were to add the PayPal account directly on the website. Bank accounts, while we are adding the bank account, we also have most often a regulatory requirement in the country that we ensure that the bank account really belongs to the end user in question. So the random deposit mechanism where we make 2 random deposits to their bank account, they go to the bank, look up those deposits, and come back and enter them in PayPal. Once they do that process, at that point, the bank account is fully ready to go in their PayPal account. The link at the bottom, return to, in this case, Bing. This is your opportunity. So most of our API takes 2 parameters called return URL and return URL description. This is your opportunity to provide a customized URL or a generic URL for your end users and a description so that when they're done with all this process, they come back to your site and you don't lose them. So that's what we provide in most of our API calls. So that's that with the add bank account. They're back on your site, and that's it. Add payment card, similar scenario. You obtain their consent. You pass in their details to us. So your API credentials, their email address, and card details. Again, we try to make it easy for you to invoke the API. So in the US, you'll have the card number and expiry date. In Europe, for example, or in the UK, you might have the issue number, and et cetera. So basically, the card details are customized for the country and for the card type that you're using. So you send us the card details. Same sort of response. You get a response, a status, which is whether the call worked or whether it failed. If it worked, you get a redirect URL back. Same situation. We ask the end user to log in. We want them to confirm that the card actually belongs to them, that they physically own the card. So for the card to be added to the account, we ask them to enter the CVV number. Unlike banks, which take a day or so to become fully available, if they get the CVV number right and get the billing address right, on clicking the Add Card button, they're ready to go. The card's available for purchases right there and then. And as you saw on this link below, they're given the opportunity to come back to your site right away. And that's that for the Add Payment Card API. Now I'm going to pass it to Harun. He's going to describe some of our integration, introduce our integration partners, and they will describe their experiences with the API.
All right. So you've heard what we've built and seen how it all works. Well, we'd like you guys to hear it directly from some of our early partners and see the value that it's actually added to their experience. So I'm going to invite Dennis Pereira onto the stage. He is a senior marketing manager for Marketplace, a classified website that is part of eBay's companies. And I'll turn it over to.
Okay. Thank you. I would like to share a very interesting case from the Netherlands. It's, as mentioned already, the largest classified site in the Netherlands. We were having a real big challenge is how can we create new accounts, new PayPal accounts on the platform without leaving the platform. And we were able to do this by using the new API, Create Account API to be more specific. And I would like to show you a short video how we managed to do that. So just sit down and please watch the video with me. Thanks.
Takes a few moments to load. So if we have any jokes in the room, now's the time to share it.
Welcome. We invite you on a journey to the Netherlands, where we are integrating PayPal on the most popular classifieds platform. This is the Netherlands. It has a population of 16 million. And this is Marktplaats.nl, part of the eBay Classifieds Group since 2004. With 6 million unique visitors a month, it is the most popular e-commerce website and one of the top 10 strongest brands. There are more than 8.7 million live listings on Marktplaats at any given time. Every second, 3 new listings are placed. That's 300,000 every day. Place, bid, and pay. Marktplaats offers their users a fully integrated PayPal checkout flow for easy and safe transaction between buyers and sellers. At this moment, approximately 40,000 users are browsing for products on Marktplaats. To show interest in a specific product, the buyer can either contact the seller or place a bid. So let's place a bid for this iPad. When the seller accepts a bid, he can directly create a PayPal payment request to the buyer. The buyer will accordingly receive a payment request email in which his bid is accepted and can now proceed to pay. On Marktplaats, he will see a final confirmation of the product and final purchase price before proceeding to the PayPal checkout environment. The Marktplaats experience is all about personal contact, in which buyers' questions are answered and final price is negotiated. Somewhere in this process, it is important that users start thinking about the payment method. We have touch points all over Marktplaats so that users can quickly learn more about PayPal. The PayPal Hub informs users about the advantages of buyer protection and buying with PayPal on Marktplaats and will guide users through the Create Account process. Users can continue shopping just a second later. While still within the Marktplaats environment, users simply fill in their personal details. At PayPal, they can create a password and add a funding source. Back at Marktplaats, a confirmation message is shown and users can continue browsing for products. It's that simple. So what does that exactly mean for the consumer? An integrated account creation process causes less dropout and increases conversion. Users remain in the Marktplaats flow, improving user experience and customer satisfaction. Users are now prepared for their first transaction on Marktplaats, and PayPal will be their preferred payment of choice. The account creation API is here for us today. But where are we tomorrow? To satisfy user experience even more, we expect product updates which minimize steps in this process and offer even more functionalities. With the support of partners, we are now exploring other platforms. Merchants can use the API to minimize dropout and earn revenue by acquiring consumer and business accounts. It's that easy.
Thank you, Dennis, for sharing the video. Next, I'd like to invite Tom Bueno. He is a senior sales technology manager here at PayPal, and he's going to talk to you about our Salesforce integration.
Thank you. I'd like to just take a couple minutes to help you understand how we actually used the API to increase productivity and reduce merchant abandonment in the sign-up process. At PayPal, we use Salesforce.com as our primary CRM for all of our merchant acquisition business. Salesforce, being a cloud-based solution, there was no means for connecting it to our payment platform prior to the ability of the API. What this meant for us is we had a very manual acquisition process. We had to guide the merchant to the website and guide them through the step-by-step process, and this resulted in increased sales cycle and increased time in the sales cycle. So it was about 30 minutes for all the steps involved to get a merchant signed up. And then sometimes it would also result in merchant abandonment of the process. The merchant would kind of give up halfway through if we didn't actually guide them through the process. So what we also had to do, we had to do a bit of swivel chairing. So once we actually got through the sign-up process, the merchant or the sales agent would have to swivel chair into our back-end systems and grab the relevant PayPal account information, push it back into Salesforce.com so that they could get commissioned, and also so that we could push financial and transactional detail back and forth into Salesforce.com for recording purposes and so forth. When we learned the adaptive API, we were highly interested in it. We immediately saw the ability to be able to use this as the mechanism for connecting the cloud to the payments platform. So what we did was we integrated Salesforce.com with the Create Accounts API. We enabled our agents, our sales agents, to complete the merchant sign-up process. So now when they're on the phone, we never lose the merchant. The merchant's on the phone. We ask them for the relevant information, and we actually go ahead and submit via a two-click process the application for them. They then receive a welcome email in which they simply accept the T's and C's and then create their password, and they're signed up, they're ready to go, they can start receiving payments immediately. And so what this does also is it helps us create a closed loop process. So as I mentioned before, we had this process where once they signed up, we actually had to go find the information in the back-end system, search, find, copy, paste, put it into Salesforce. What this does is we're now actually taking that information and we're pulling it back through the response via the API, populating it in Salesforce.com. Then we can systematically synchronize the data between Salesforce.com and the payments platform. We created a simple two-click application process that's completed by our sales agents. And we're doing complete data write back into Salesforce.com. The simple two-click process, we have created a custom object in Salesforce.com where they simply just click on Submit PayPal Account. It brings up a verification page. We verify that all the information is true and correct, and then we submit. That immediately sends the request through the API. The response comes back and immediately tells us the disposition of the application. What did this get us? It resulted in a 20% increase in productivity in our merchant acquisition small business telesales organization. It was a very simple integration. We actually used a brand new developer. We hired a developer from out in the field as an addition to our Salesforce technology team. She had no previous experience with the payment product whatsoever. And as I said, she was a Salesforce developer, not a financial analyst or a developer of any kind. So she actually helped us kind of refine our integration process and help us refine the documentation. She used the exact same resources that would be available to all of you in this integration. We were able to reduce agent call time by 15 minutes a call. So this is above and beyond the actual sales call, the time they spend on the phone with the merchant, and we eliminated the need for swivel chair data entry. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom. There you have it. Easy to use. Next, I'd like to invite Clayton Bain to the stage. Clayton comes to us from a company called MedPay Online, and he'll talk to you a little bit about the company and their integration with Adaptive Accounts.
My name is Clayton Bain, product manager for MedPay Online. We facilitate payments for medical providers, doctors, clinics, hospitals. One of the things about MedPay is that each of our clients obviously needs a PayPal account. We get a lot of our referrals from our clients from value-added resellers, software companies, billing companies, receivable management companies. Usually they come in and we would have to set them up with a MedPay account, which we had through API, and then actually manually walk them through the PayPal account setup, or in some cases with some doctors who are specifically technically not there, I guess you could say. We would actually have to do it for them. This killed our productivity, hit a lot of snags. It was just slowing everything down, especially with the way that we were trying to grow. So what Adaptive Accounts does is, you can see right there on the right-hand portion of the page, we've got our MedPay sign-up form. We actually need a lot of the same information that PayPal does. So we collect all the information, send it over via API, and what you'll see right there is a mini browser that pops up and collects the password information. After that, both a MedPay account and a PayPal account are created. So what does this do for us? It enables us to sign up accounts with absolutely no customer interaction. So what that means is we have an ability now to mass market, to put it out there and advertise on Google, and offer it out to our value-added resellers to just do massive email blasts to get the doctors in. If we didn't have this adaptive account, from a resource standpoint, we'd just be swamped trying to get all these PayPal accounts created. The mini browser specifically creates a one-page sign-up, so we don't ever have to redirect anyone anywhere, which is usually a pretty good thing. Keep it simple if you keep it on one page. And as I mentioned, the easy sign-up gives us the ability to mass market. In addition, it's really easy for our partners to refer customers. So that's how we use adaptive accounts, and it's really useful for us. So thanks.
So to summarize, we've shown you guys what adaptive accounts is, how you guys can use it and help solve part of your problems. And you've heard from our partners who I'd like to invite over to the stage. And if you guys have any questions, we'd be happy to field them at this moment. In front here.
Yeah, if you want to verify accounts, like, for instance, you have a taxpayer ID or EIN, you want to make sure that, I have that number from somewhere, and I want to make sure that the person that the PayPal account is associated with has the same taxpayer ID for fraud protection, or so I can make sure that the money's going to the people that I say it is. Is there a way for me to verify that kind of information with the PayPal APIs?
I don't think at this point we don't really support, like public verification. To be specifically clear, the Get Verified Status API specifically enables you to determine whether a given PayPal end user has a verified PayPal account. That does mean a few things. So that means PayPal has actually gone out and knows the customer in certain ways by their addition of a funding source. If it's a business account, they must have added their tax ID as well. And so by dealing with a customer who's PayPal verified, you're implicitly getting some assurance that you're dealing with the person who they say they were, based on some of the checks that we did when the account was being created or the funding source that were being added. So by that virtue, you implicitly get your answer in that form with Get Verified Status, but it's not an explicit check of public records or something like that to determine if someone is who they say it is. All it's basically saying is that PayPal in their checks determine that this person is who that person says he or she is.
Yes, for the same API, I have a question. So, is it free for the application to call, or PayPal will charge for each call?
For the Get Verified Status API?
Yes.
It is at the moment free to call it. So you can call it as many times as you like.
Could people abuse that API? Say they want to collect some information for users. They create an application, they can get all this information in their database.
So, but given that we ask for you to have the first name, the last name, and the email address exactly right before we inform you of the verification status of that PayPal customer, that is our attempt to make it unlikely to try for someone to use this for phishing, for example, or try to get non-public information about someone. Basically, you must have their first name, last name, and email address exactly right before we will admit, by stating whether an account is verified or unverified.
Yeah, thank you.
The process makes it seamless in regards to creating an account. A lot of users also forget their PayPal account. Is there a process to make it seamless in regards to a customer who does not recall his password or his login?
Sure. So a couple of options. So the use cases that you can run into here is that you call the Create Account API, you gave the end user the redirect URL, but say their PC shut down or their browser crashed or something. A couple of options. They will first get an email from us with the redirect URL also, so that they can go there directly. If they don't go there still, they'll get reminder emails to complete the account creation process. And so that's how we address the situation where someone doesn't complete the create account process. Now, if you're talking about a specific scenario where someone forgot their password, when you call the create account API and the account already exists, they will still get a redirect URL. When the end user goes to that redirect URL, they'll be redirected to the PayPal.com website, and with their email address pre-populated. And what that means is that there's a forgot your password link there, and depending on what the user already had on their PayPal account, it'll ask them to recall certain information about them before they're allowed to reset their password. So I think in most of the scenarios that you can run into where an end user doesn't remember that they had a PayPal account or forgot about it, we provide options, and ultimately they can also call PayPal customer service to try to prove their identity to reset the password. So I think there are some options available for an end user to try to recover their password and have a functioning PayPal account already. Yeah.
I'm sure there's the option. I was just trying to link back to the example that we saw with a small pop-up light window. In that regards, so the user is not moving away from the application. That small window is all they need to actually exploit their information gathering in that regards. So that's an option that can be actually utilized as of this moment?
So that the many browsers available right now. It should be available. Actually, it'll be available in a couple of days, live to site and also on Sandbox. And that way, you'll be able to actually try that option out with existing accounts to the experience that you want to see.
Thank you.
Our firm has worked with users who, with phishing being more prevalent, are a little bit suspicious or cautious of entering information into one site and then having it sent over to another site. Mm-hmm. And one question I had with this is I mean, I saw in the video you guys are looking to try and reduce the number of steps here, but I just have how would you respond to the concern that seeing a login page and other information from PayPal after being in that seamless user experience for that first site, mm-hmm. How would you respond to that concern? What would you say for users like that? How do we, when we're building our apps, communicate that to the users that it's safe and they can trust that transition?
Yeah. So a couple of options. With a pop-up window coming from your site, if they trust your site, and it's a pop-up or light box coming from your site, I think that hopefully is a... And also, if you look at the pop-up experience, you'll see that most browsers nowadays have site verification. So you're going to a PayPal.com domain. Most browsers have found that it's a good domain. So they'll have the green on the browser bar indicating that they're going to PayPal.com instead of some phishing site. It's coming from your site. And so whether you use the full browser experience, which we showed in the Marketplace site, or the pop-up browser, The browser is also verifying that it's a valid site. They trust your site, and you're redirecting them somewhere. So I hope that provides enough ability to enable them to complete the experience in a trustworthy manner.
Okay. One other question I had with that is, do both sites have to be SSL secured in order for that seamless window experience to work?
Yeah, so our sites, I'm not sure about, I don't think we have any requirements on the end user side, although since you're displaying their private information to them, it is a good practice to have that SSL enabled. Our sites in all of these sensitive URLs that we redirect them to are all SSL enabled, so we never make them available in HTTP only. No.
Maybe.
Sure, go ahead, David.
Can I just add something to that? If you look at the Marktplaats example, if people trust the original brand, it even enhances the trust, because consumers in the Netherlands are just saying like, okay, if this platform is adapting PayPal or integrating PayPal, it must be a good thing. So that's our experience. But it's more from a branding perspective. If you tie the two brands together, it gets even stronger. So.
Again, getting back to this phishing thing, so you've got this thing that pops up on your site that says, I'm PayPal, right? And I'm hearing this argument that, well, you trust the site, it's Joe's Used Cars, and maybe he's from Romania, but he's a nice guy. Who knows what happens after a couple of years? Is there something in your interface that says, I don't really know if I trust him, can I go to PayPal? In other words, in the default thing that pops up on the page, I want the alternative, as a matter of course, on every single page, to say, hey, I want to get off of this page, go to PayPal and verify, and then come back. Otherwise, you're saying it's an all or nothing. I trust the Joe's Used Cars, or I don't trust them. Right. So do you have that in your interface?
Sure. So actually, the current behavior that exists right now is instead of using the pop-up, the redirect URL that we give you, so there in the API there will be a parameter called use many browser equals true or false, and by default it's false. And so that's what, if you set use many browser equals false or don't set it, what will happen is that the redirect URL that you get back will be a paypal.com URL. And so when you're redirecting them, they're actually going to a paypal.com full site, and they can complete the operation there. And then using the return URL and return URL description that I mentioned earlier, they come back to your site. So,
if the vendor gives you the pop-up,
right?
Does the user have a easy click on that pop-up to say, I want to go off to PayPal's site with the URL showing? That to me is important. Is that there?
Well, if you're using the full browser experience, then you wouldn't really necessarily pop that up. You would actually maybe call the JavaScript to redirect someone to a new URL. Basically, use the URL new value or something like that to send them to the PayPal. So they're actually going to go, instead of popping up the full browser experience.
We're not talking about what the programmer does or who sets up the site. I'm saying as a user, if I see a pop-up there within a site, I as the user want to say, I don't know about this, I want to go off the site to PayPal. Is that in there? I don't care about what the developers do or what you do. I as the user want that capability.
So the user gets an email from PayPal too, because suppose you're the user, I click off the pop-up browser, and I would get an email from PayPal saying, I can also get an email from PayPal saying that click on this link, because that would, you can verify that it's an official email.
But if I've already paid Used Cars, it's too late.
No, you won't pay unless you create an account, right?
And the account is completed. That's right.
I think what he's saying is that, I think a better solution for you, since that's a major concern, would not to be to use the mini browser, but to go, a better solution for you, because that's your major concern, would not to be to use a mini browser, and instead go off.
We're not talking about me as a developer, we're talking about me as the customer. Whenever I as a customer, and there's millions of sites that are going to be using PayPal, see a mini browser, I want the customer to be able to opt out and be able to go easily with a click box off to the PayPal site. And is that in there, in the user interface?
That's okay. Your customer, all right, you can build it for your customer so that they never use a mini browser.
No, I don't think you understand. I'm not talking about me building it for the customer. I'm saying PayPal should, in the mini browser window, automatically, with every single mini browser window, give the customer the chance to opt out. That should be just part of the interface.
Okay. That's good feedback. We'll make a note of it. Sure. Okay. Great. Yeah, I understand. I'll make a note of that. Thank you. Sure. Go ahead. There's one more.
Can this pop-up be modal to the whatever screen we're on, website we're on?
Sorry, do you mean mobile as in like?
Modal. In other words.
Yeah. So actually we leave the responsibility of putting that in the Lightbox code around the redirect URL to the developer. So if you're using a typical Lightbox library, you could make it where the Lightbox is the only thing visible on the screen until they enter the password, and then they click the X, then the screen goes away. So I guess that's one way to accomplish that function.
And maybe just to add to that, I think part of the success is that the look and feel can be changed and adopted. So a lot of our merchants and classified sites like it because you can create the entire look and feel of the website. I think that's a big advantage. You can just co-brand it or brand it the way you like. So big advantage.
So since we're talking about the privacy and the security here, so I have a question. I started to use PayPal probably at the early stage of PayPal, and then because I don't want to give out all my credit card information, which anybody can take that to or pass it along, or somebody can use that to buy stuff online, right? So that's the idea of using PayPal. But what I didn't realize is I actually my spam increased 10 times because people because I learned this later. So you can register with your email account. You don't really care, right? But unfortunately, I used my primary email address, and then I bought something on eBay. So I got my stuff, but my spam increased like 10 times in the span of 2 months. Then I stopped using PayPal. So basically, what happened is when the vendor, somebody sell cheap batteries, whatever, then when I pay them through PayPal, they got my email address, which is my, then they may pass along to somebody else and then end up in the spam pool, and then I'm keep spam, I can't get rid of this spam. So any way we can, kind of like a shield identity from the seller. So basically, they don't get my email because my identity is my email, right? Email address is my identity, and then so I guess sometimes vendor they don't really care as long as they're supposed they get their money, they can send this address. That's all they care. They don't really necessarily need my email address because email is just so easy to spam.
I think this is a very simple matter of actually using potentially another email. Really, when you're transacting, the user would like to know who they're dealing with as well. Now, if you're obviously using an email which just gives out information regarding your name, then you can certainly have the option to use another email address.
If somebody fraud me, and let's say I do have more than one email, but some other emails I don't check maybe for a week, and if someone steal money from my PayPal account, and then I wouldn't know until a week or a month later. So that's why I want to use my primary because it's money, right? So if someone use my account, take over my account, pay it, I will supposed to get a notification, and if I don't use my primary email account, I wouldn't know until a month later. That wouldn't do any good.
Well, I highly encourage you to check all the emails that you currently use, and obviously if you have it linked to your PayPal account, it's important to have that
Let me try this. I'm from PayPal as well. So actually internally PayPal knows this is issue because email address actually it is a privacy. So you are working on the architecture current user domain to disassociate the email address and your account username. So probably in the future, you only need to provide a username. You don't need to provide your email address as the only username for PayPal.
So basically, the username is going to pass along to the vendor?
Right. But your email address is hidden from the vendor.
Yeah. Thanks for the question. We can move on to the next question. I think we had one in the back over there.
Thanks. Is it possible to use the Adaptive Accounts API if you're not using the Adaptive, what's the name of the other
Payments?
API? Yeah.
Sure, that's correct. So basically, when you you submit your application for vetting at x.com, and at that point you're asked to determine which APIs you want to use, and so there is no requirement to link the two. You can use as whichever subset that suits your needs when you submit the application to x.com for vetting.
All right. Well, thank you very much. I appreciate you guys attending the session. Thank you.